Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October Schools Forum. I hope you've all had a good start to the new term. I'll just run through who we have present with us today. There's myself, Alison Coleman, Andrew Berry, Councillor Andrew Reid, Angela Ransby, Anna Mears, Christina Lewis, Colin Shaw, Daniel Jones, Emma White, Emma Wilson-Downs, Gemma Morgan, Jacqueline Dyer, Julia Haig, Michael Quinton, Paul Fykin, Rowena Mackey, Sharon Muldoon, Sonia Harben, Stephen Dewing, Susan Shields, and Teresa Spilling. So welcome all to you all for joining us today. We have had apologies from James Clark, Gordon Jones, Jennifer Smith and Robert Lenko. And since our last meeting, two people have left Schools Forum, Angela Goducci and Darren Woodward, and there have been nominations for new mainstream academy representatives to Schools Forum. So we welcome Jennifer Smith and Emma Wilson-Downs onto Schools Forum. So I know at the moment, I don't think I saw that Jennifer Smith was here today, but welcome Emma to your first meeting of Schools Forum. Please, if there are any questions, feel free to ask. No question is a daft question here. We have invited all nominated substitutes to attend the meeting, and I know that Gordon's substitute is here today, so welcome to you. Just to say that for etiquette reasons, while others are speaking, if you could keep your microphones on mute and your cameras off, that would be appreciated. But we would really welcome you to turn your cameras on if you're making a point or asking a question. And when you first do so, if you could just introduce yourselves, that would be really good, just to let everybody know who you are. So if we now move on to the first agenda item, which is the minutes of our last meeting, and that was held on the 3rd of July. And if I can take it for accuracy and matters arising page by page, please. And if there's anything you want to raise, please call out. So anything from page 1 and 2, 3, 4. Page 5, we have 2 actions. Gemma, have you been made aware of any direction from the DFE about changing our practice as part of the Delivering Better Value programme? I know we talked about at the last meeting about the fact that in the past DFE hadn't been able to suggest any different practice that they wanted us to do, but we just were querying at the last meeting whether there had been anything more recently that they'd mentioned.
Hi Alison, hello everybody. So we haven't, not specifically around the Delivering Better Value programme, however, we have had lots of contact with our DFE advisor, who's called Helen Chester. She's been in to look at the work that we're undertaking in Suffolk, and has started by looking at our panel process, and has come back with some feedback about some changes and some things moving forward. There's some more panels this term that she's attending, so we expect there to be some more advice coming from that through that route. So I think that is our best route for suggestion and change with the things that we're doing.
Okay, thanks for that update, Gemma. That's really helpful. Thank you. And Sonia, there was an action around passenger transport to provide some information for Councillor Richards. Can you just confirm that happened? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Alison. Good morning, everybody. I think Julia's not here today. I did speak with Julia, and I've got a feeling that I think passenger transport, because of the new academic term, I'm not sure if that's actually yet been done, but I will take that back again and speak to Julie when she's back in the office, and we'll get something sent out to Councillor Richards.
Super, thanks very much. So that was page 5, and there was a little bit on page 6. Is there anything else anybody wants to raise? Otherwise, we'll record that they were an accurate reflection of our meeting. Okay, thank you very much. So paper B is the approval of Central School Services Block 2627 budget. So if I can hand over to, oh, sorry, Councillor Reid, you've got your hand up. Apologies.
Yes, thank you, Alison. Yes, Councillor Andrew Reid, Cabinet Member for Education and SEND. Just to say that Councillor Richards, if we're talking about Debbie Richards, has moved on to a new post within the County Council, just for your information.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful for that update, Andrew. Thank you. So, Mike, could I hand over to you to introduce the next paper, please?
Yes, morning, Alison. Thank you. Morning, everybody. Michael Quinton, Senior Accountant, working in corporate services and supporting CYP and schools. So what I'll do, I'll introduce the paper, just give a brief summary, and then Julie will come in with sort of more of the detail. She can elaborate on anything if necessary and answer any questions that you may have. So this is for the approval of the Central Schools Services block for next year. So the DfE is continuing to reduce the historical commitment of the Central Services Schools block. So this is 20% every year, which we've seen for the last 7 years, I think it is now. So this works out at a reduction for 26-27 of 347,000. So the forum is being asked to agree this funding with these savings, as in previous years, being met through corporate funding. So we're not cutting any of the services to schools. We're meeting these cuts through corporate resources within the County Council. So the vote that Alison will kick off at the end of this paper is for the family support services budget of 1.367 million for next year, and the residual redundancy costs, so historical redundancy costs that we can still pay against, of £23,000 for next year. So just a bit of background on the historic funding stream. So the CSSB was introduced following the removal of the Education Services grant. Again, this is when the NFF was kicked off in 2017-18, and what it did, it combined funding for statutory retained duties, which were previously covered by the ESG, funding for ongoing central functions supporting schools, and also historic commitments that were originally agreed by Schools Forum back in sort of 2013. So these budgets were called combined contribution to budgets, and this is where the funding for early help, now family support services, came from, and that's why we're still having this agreement 12 years down the line. So just some of the key points, I think. So these proposals protect the current service levels for schools. So although there's a reduction in funding through the DSG, the corporate pot in effect are funding those resources that DSG once would have done. So you know, the funding levels that you see for schools do not change. If not approved, then we would need to find the full amount through corporate resources. And as you know, corporately, Suffolk County Council are going through a tough time with their finances, so this would be a massive ask for Suffolk County Council to find that additional funding. So that's just a brief overall summary of CSSB, what you're being asked to do and why we're in this position, and then I'll hand over to Julia, who can either elaborate on her report or answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome, Julia.
Good morning, colleagues. Just to add to what Michael has shared, yeah, the paper sets out some of the activity that's delivered by the family support services across the county for children and young people. The focus for family support is targeted early help, so it is those children and families, young people who don't require a statutory intervention. There is some group-based delivery there, and also have set out the different types of work and support for children and families across the county. I'm happy to take any questions or any queries with regards to the paper, but I'm hoping that it supports colleagues' understanding of what the resource is contributing to.
Thank you, Julia. It was all set out. Thank you, really well in the paper. So does anybody have any questions before we move to the vote? Can't see any hands coming up. So it looks like everybody has all the information they need. Okay, Jacqueline, could we launch the vote, please? So voting members, you should now have the vote on your screen. So please select the answer that you wish and submit. I think there's a few more people still to vote. Thank you. So it's unanimously in favour. So thank you all for voting. So if we can move on to the second vote then, please. Or do you want to speak about that first, Mike? Is there anything you want to say about the redundancy costs before we go to the vote?
No, as I said, it's just a residual historic redundancy cost. So we can't pay for any new redundancies pre-2013. So this pot will generally reduce as time goes by, but we've just kept it at the same amount as we did for last year. But as I said, that will generally reduce over the next sort of few years as those commitments sort of disappear. Okay,
thanks for that clarification. So Jacqueline, if we could launch the second vote then, please. And thank you those of you for whom the vote isn't working, that you're putting your information in the chat. We're picking that up. Thank you. So if voting members could now select the option they wish and submit that, or put your answer in the chat, whichever you need to do. You can see some answers are coming in both ways. And again, we've got a unanimous vote in favour. So thank you all very much for voting for that. Thank you very much, Julia, for the work that you and your team do in support of schools. That we know if you could, that there would be an even bigger service, because we know how much need there is out there, but we know you do as much as you can and support schools in supporting children and their families. So thank you very much. Okay, thank you. So we can move on now to paper C. And we've briefly seen Gemma already this morning, but welcome back, Gemma.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Gemma Morgan. I'm the Head of SEND Funding and Provider Services. Along here with me today also is Sharon Muldoon, who is our Service Director. I'm going to go through the paper with you all first, and then Sharon and I will take any questions that you have. Okay, so our paper this term is for information only, but it's just to keep you updated on the current position with the DSG overspend. I report on this regularly, as you all know, and therefore we like to keep you informed and on the position of the budget. So the paper outlines where we were at Q1 of the financial year. And as you can see, we are 64.3 million overspent in the DSG. So the Q2 data is currently being collated. And what I'm going to propose that I do is come back in January to the January meeting with an updated position, because what we're anticipating is that this cumulative the deficit is going to rise further in the next quarter. We're doing some work around the data, the information that's coming through around the demand and need in the system, where those places need to be put. And by the January forum, we will have a much better picture of what that's going to look like for the rest of the financial year and for the end of year position. So the paper goes on to talk about unregulated alternative provision. Again, I've spoken to you about this in previous schools forums. We have such a demand for that type of provision. We try to use it for short-term intervention and to place children while they're awaiting specialist placements. But you can see from the tables on page 3 that this has been growing rapidly since 2020-21, and we're now spending just shy of 20 million on unregulated alternative provision. It is unregulated because what that means is they're not inspected by Ofsted. However, within the local authority, we do treat them like a regulated provider. So we do have contract review meetings with them. We do checks on their processes, their policies and procedures, and we do make sure that they are meeting all of the minimum standards of the local authority. So we don't treat them any differently to any other provider that is supporting any of our children and young people with SEND. As we have mentioned previously, we're waiting for the white paper that is due to be published in the autumn term. So we're waiting for that any minute now. The outcomes of that, obviously we will respond to those as quickly as possible. Alison and I spoke this morning about Gordon Jones had raised a question around the white paper and what that will look like moving forward. We think it'll have some information in there around strengthening SEND support in mainstream schools, hence why that's in my paper. Also a national funding formula, so what that might look like, whether it is how the funding is received by the local authority or how the local authority distributes that funding. We should know from the paper when it is published. So we're all waiting for that paper, because the other thing is it will include SEND reforms, which will affect the whole of the system. So the other thing that the paper covers is growth in specialist provision. So we've had a SEND capital programme running since 2019. That programme is continuing, and in April this year we were given some additional authority to spend some funding that had come from the DfE on additional places. We've managed to create 150 places in settings attached to mainstream schools, and we're looking to create a further 160 spaces in existing special schools. So this is all about using the expertise that's already in the system to grow provision, make the most of the any space we might have in existing schools, or develop satellite provision, which we're doing in various locations across the county. Okay, so that's everything that the paper covers. As I said, we will be coming back in January with much more information about the spend on the budget and the data which sits behind that. Does anybody have any questions? Gemma. Thank you, Alison.
Sharon, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just to add to that, thanks, Gemma, that alongside this work, as a local area partnership, we do have a SEND sufficiency strategy that runs out in December 25. So alongside this work, we're also looking at the future SEND sufficiency requirements as a partnership. So that involves our health colleagues, school colleagues, etc. So as we're moving through understanding demand and moving through the improvement journey, reducing our delays, etc. in assessments and annual reviews, using that live data to inform our future requirements, both in that SEND capital space, but also thinking about the opportunities working with our schools in terms of that specialist provision that Gemma's identified.
Great, thanks very much. I'll open it up for any questions for Gemma or Sharon. I think we're all very well versed in this topic. So, Susan.
Good morning. Sorry,
Morning.
just trying to get the tech to work. Doesn't seem to want to. Hi, Gemma. Just a question from me on just looking through, and as somebody who doesn't regularly attend these meetings, and I'm covering for Robert Lenko today. Could you just explain to me how the top-up funding of 70 million, what that sort of represents? Because I can see everything else broken down quite well, but this is sort of nearly 50% of it, and I'm not really clear what that's used for.
Yes, of course, Susan, absolutely. So we split funding into three elements. So element one is the place funding, or the ORPU in a mainstream school. Then element two is additional funding required for SEND provision, and then top up funding is element three. So this is the funding that the local authority gives to, so it's to all settings. So it'll be AP schools, mainstream schools, special schools, and it's that funding that they need beyond the first 6,000 of SEND support, and we distribute it in Suffolk through a banding system. So it's all the banding values. So a child will have between a band A and H. Some also have I, which is our highest bands, but that's our banded funding, Susan, across all settings.
Cool. I've definitely seen the banding funding before, so that's really helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you. You're welcome.
No problem. You're welcome. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Thanks, Gemma.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so the only other paper we have today is paper D, the forward agenda. For those who are new to Forum, the November meeting is always one where there's a lot of voting. That's around the approval of what are called de-delegated budgets. So in effect, it's money that the DfE through their funding model has passport to school budgets, but that we then have to vote if we want to retain the central services that all schools use. So that's what that paper is all about. And updates on the schools block funding submission. So again, that's the paper where we review how we split up the national funding formula between the different blocks within that. And then dedicated schools grant spend finance update will likely be a verbal update on that one, and the outturn of school budgets, and a look at early years final outturn for 24-25 for early years. So that's what's on the agenda for November. Does anybody have any final points they would like to make or questions about the forward agenda? Please note you have been circulated dates for 2026, so please make sure that you've put those in your calendars. And nobody's putting their hands up, so thank you all very much for attending today, and I'll close the meeting. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.